Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Just Hospitality with Simon and Victoria. Few things I want to say before we begin our second podcast on the retention and recruitment circle. First of all is thank you very much for all of the support and feedback we got on last week's podcast. It was our first ever one. As Si said, the technicals were never going to be great and they were pretty awful, but the feedback we received was absolutely amazing. So genuinely, thank you from both of us. One piece of feedback we did get from a couple of people is that I keep saying 100% Si. So what we're going to do in today's podcast is Si is going to keep a tally of every time I say 100% Si. And for every time I say it, I'll donate £1 to, I don't know if you can see that, so I've got a blurred background, but Only a Pavement Away. So these guys are a great charity. They do a lot for the homeless and getting people back into work in the hospitality industry. So it's run by, one of the ambassadors is Tom Akins. And yeah, so basically every time I say 100% Si, Only a Pavement Away, I get £1. That could end up with a pretty high total by the end of the school.
Well, I overspoke you at least a dozen times on the last podcast, and I've just literally done it now. So since you're being generous with Only a Pavement Away, I'll do exactly the same. I'll keep a tally also of when I overspeak, or you keep a tally of when I overtalk you unnecessarily, and we will each donate our money, and it's a bit of fun and something for a good cause.
Fantastic.
Nice
so we've already got £1. We've already got £1 from you, Si. That's brilliant. Excellent. Okay. Let's move on to our next topic, which is the retention and recruitment circle. So I'm going to hand over to Si today to start this off. This is one of his huge passions. Now, before I do that, with regards to retention and recruitment, kind of the life cycle, the circle, we're not here today to say if we can tell you what to do to retain 100% of people so you never have to recruit again. It's not going to happen, unfortunately, as much as we'd all like to. But what we're going to be doing today is talking about ways to retain your workforce, to make them feel valued. And there's multiple different retention strategies that Si and I are going to talk about just to effectively reduce that recruitment requirement. And it's sort of increase the retention, reduce the recruitment as much as we can. So I'll hand over to you, Si.
Well, you kind of covered it. I mean, this is a really interesting topic because everyone at the moment obviously is focused on recruitment, and that's really understandable. There's a need now to recruit. There's a need now to get employees into the business and team members working with you, and everyone's panicking and looking at the short-term need. Fully understandable. I completely get it, but I do think it would be a mistake to look longer into your business and say, how do I prevent this crisis from happening again? Not that this crisis is of anybody's individual making in the operations world. It's just a case of what can we do to reduce the need for recruitment in the future. Now, there's a myriad of things we could be discussing today. And also just on that point, we're never going to fully rule out recruitment because there's a lot of positive need for recruitment. People being promoted and you need to fill positions underneath them. People returning to the home country. People moving within your business to another business. There's a load of positive reasons. What we're trying to do today is help reduce any of the negative reasons that people might leave your business. We've decided to focus on 3 aspects today, okay, under 3 headings. The first being progression, the second being the values, purpose, and culture of your company, and the third being employee or team member welfare. And, like I say, there's a dozen different subjects under all of these, and we could do an individual podcast on company cultures, I'm sure. But since we have committed to keeping these kind of short and sweet, we thought we'd hit these 3 topics. And first of all, wanted to launch by talking about progression. Now, I'll just kick this off and then hand over to Vic. But progression to me is something that we in hospitality do well, yet advertise badly. I was on a Zoom call yesterday talking to a load of my kind of colleagues, and we all talked about people who started in the industry at entry-level jobs, kitchen porter, waiter, bartender, and moves away up to being MD, CEO, CO. You know, I hold my hand up. I started at an entry-level job. I started in the industry when I was very young, working on the pot wash, and then moved to the bar and commie chef. And I ended up doing some quite senior jobs within the industry. And I'm certainly not unique in that. I'm not alone. Most of my peer groups, when I have sat around a board table, have worked solid in the industry. What we don't hear, though, Victoria, is people shouting about it and talking about it. And I think as an industry, we've done ourselves really poorly in promoting that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree. Not 100%, but I would completely agree with
I'm
that.
having it.
With that point, so, and it's something that I've always been very passionate about in terms of the industry, because I really feel, and I touched on this last week about the whole perception of the industry, but yeah, we just don't talk about it. But the question there is, where do we talk about it? How should we talk about the progression opportunities that are available in our organisation? Are we just going to put it in a job ad? We can't really detail all of the different opportunities that are available. Are we going to put it in a social media post? It's probably not the right platform. So for me, if you've got those great stories and you've got people like yourself and our other colleagues who have really started at the very beginning and grown within the industry, then you need to be talking about it on your website. You need to be saying, this is what Sai done. Sai is our operations director. This is what Victoria done. Victoria's a senior management team member. This is where they started. And be that just in text, be that in video, talk about it on your website and then share that on your social media, and just really make sure that those points are out there.
That's a really valid point, and that demonstrates what you're doing internally to external people who might be joining your business. I wonder where the opportunity is, though, to communicate what you can achieve to your colleagues within your own business. And I wonder, I worked in a business a few years ago, and we actually created a poster of a career ladder. It was, you know, somebody cartooned it up for us, and it was a ladder, and it was the various steps on the ladder up to the MD position, but also what you needed to do to achieve the next step on the ladder. So there was some external qualifications and courses offered. There were some internal things we did. And, you know, that got really good take up. People were really interested because there's also, you know, the reality is there's people who think other people get promoted above me because their boss likes them better or their face fits or they've been here longer. For me, progression within the company, if it's demonstrated on some sort of poster on a career ladder,
yeah.
If you do A, B, and C, this is what happens to you. You do D, E, and F, this is what happens to you. And this is your reward for getting it. I just wonder, we are talking about retention. So to retain in, if I was, you know, employing you, Victoria, to keep you in the business, if I offered you a very transparent career path going forward, would that be something you'd be happy to see?
Of course it would, but I think what's key there is you mentioned A, B, and C or D, E, and F. So you need to make sure that there are multiple pathways available to your existing team. And then posters, great, Si. But another way to do it is to manage this online and provide your team with access to a learning management system so they can see the journeys that are available to them, and they can even access that content and those courses to make sure that they can follow what they want to do to get where they want to be. And another important piece of that is your communication and your constant engagement with your employees. Like you said, you need to let them know, whether that's online, whether that's on posters, whether that's when they clock in, have you looked at your learning management system today, or whatever you call that learning management system internally. But you really need, you're absolutely right. I'm talking about it from a recruitment perspective. We need to advertise it out there in the industry, but equally, we need to talk about it internally and make sure that there's portals and channels for your existing staff to find out about this and what they can do.
I think, by the way, I keep asking you if you agree with me, and I'm desperate to get you to say 100%, Si. You're just not having it, are you? I'll find another way. I think we talked last week about the ambassadors for your business being your current employees, and I think your ambassadors for retention are also your current team members. Mm-hmm. And, you know, having a strong L&D process, having great training. And just to separate these two things out, for anybody who may be listening, people, in my view, get training and learning and development tangled into the same basket. And to me, they're very separate things. And, it's just a personal thing. For me, training someone is training them to do the existing role that they're doing and to make them great at it and to give them the tools to excel at that existing role. Learning and development is tools available to them to progress them throughout their career, or, and I've seen this happen in many cases, just to help them as individuals. It might be things actually unrelated to their job, but I worked with someone who really wanted to be a counsellor, so we paid for them to do some counselling courses because I knew that their loyalty, we keep them for another couple of years while they were going through this part-time course. Those skills that they were learning could be transferable back into our business, and we were left with a very happy team member who worked alongside us for a period of time. So that's where learning and development sits. Training is a fundamental part of doing your everyday job. We talk about training, we talk about retention, V, but the one thing we don't actually tackle in the notes we've made today, and I think it's probably worth noting, is people leave when they're unhappy, and people become unhappy when they don't know how to do their jobs properly, or they're judged not to be able to do their job properly, or they're inducted badly, or they don't understand what the company stands for. I think this is absolute key. You said communication a few minutes ago. I think communicating everything to your team members from the word go is absolutely everything, and then following throughout their lifespan with you. It's just what it's all about, really.
Yeah, I agree. And with the communication and the onboarding right from the very beginning, having the policy of no question is a stupid question. It sounds something very simple, but so many companies fail to do it. They do the induction, they put people on the floor, and the GM just expects them to know, you've been through the induction, why don't you know what you're doing? We're busy, you need to move on. So really having that kind of that value and the culture of please ask, we're all willing to help, to make sure that they can do their current job properly, will then give them the confidence to progress and potentially take up that development, like you say, Si, to move on to a different role. And another key point that you mentioned there with regards to the counselling, that was unique to that employee. So that's one thing you need to remember with all of your employees. Everybody's journey is different. So make sure you've understood what your employee wants and then see what you can give them to help them get to where they want to be.
I couldn't agree more. 100%, Victoria. So
I'm having that.
With that, yeah, you have that. With that, I think we segue nicely into the point number 2 you and I wanted to chat today about, which is in retention techniques, which is the values, purpose, and culture of a company. There's books and books and books. Simon Sinek, for example, did a lot of work on the why, the question of why. People get behind a company's purpose. People get behind the why you're doing this. If they can resonate with it, if they can really bond with it and understand it, ultimately, nobody wants to work for someone because the shareholders want to make more money. There's got to be something deeper at a values level behind it. And even if the purpose and why isn't all that, because not every company is out there to save the planet, to go carbon neutral, to be whatever it might be. The culture that sits within an organization, be that organization if it's just a street food truck or it's a 3,000 strong pub company, the culture of that organization is everything to every team member if it's done correctly, because that will influence how they are treated and how they treat others.
Exactly. And I think that the important thing with culture is just not to talk about it, but to actually live it. And all of your team members, if they're living the culture that you stand by, so in hospitality, a lot of the time we have cultures and values of service first, customers first, and we want to be this really happy, welcoming place for people to come. And you need to make sure that that culture isn't just written on your website, isn't just written in your employee handbook as values, it's actually lived on a day-to-day basis. And that starts from the top. you as an MD and owner of a company, all the way through your senior management, down to your general managers, your supervisors, and your people on the floor, everybody has to live that culture. Because if I'm coming into a business and they're telling me, this is the culture, this is what you need to do everything you can for the customer, and I get in on my first day and the GM's like, oh yeah, I'll do it in a minute. What culture? That culture doesn't really exist. It's just on paper.
You touched on something there that really grates on me. It's so lazy and half-assed when you see their values written on a website or it's on a bronze plaque in somebody's head office, and you just go, okay, if I was to ask my waiter, if I go in one of your restaurants, would they be able to not only recite the 4 or 5 words you've got there, but explain why it's done? We did a great exercise with a company I was working with, and I'd encourage everyone to do this exercise. It's time consuming in a way, but it was excellent. We basically laid out an entire team member journey from the job advert through the recruitment process, the onboarding process, the induction, through to their performance reviews, what would happen in the disciplinary, what would happen in the grievance, what would happen in the promotion stakes, all the way through this journey to exit interview. And then we took the values and purpose and culture of the organization and the key things we were proud of and we wanted to shout about in the organization and tied them in. So for example, just a very quick example is a team member could be one of the best financially performing team members, but when it came to promotion time, unless they were demonstratively living the values of the organization, which were mainly about customer and people care in this particular organization, unless they could give examples of where they were living our values as well as making money for us, they didn't get that promotion. And that goes back to Jack Welch's work back in the 80s and early 90s. But it's crucial and fantastic work to highlight this all the way through an employee journey. So as you're saying, Victoria, people are living it, not just writing it down somewhere.
Agreed. So, and you mentioned their time, and this is one of the key things for me within culture, values. We can't necessarily measure the return on investment for the time we invest in looking at our culture and values. We can't physically say, right, that earned us X additional amount of money. But believe me when I say, as an organization, if you do spend that time, like you did, to take the time to kind of almost pick apart everything you do at the moment and rebuild it, the return on investment that you will get long term from great people staying in your business and then other great people coming into your business and staying in your business is immeasurable. Not because it's not physical, but just because it will be so huge.
I couldn't agree more. And I think just sort of squaring the circle on this one, I think we're both saying the same thing, which is it's great. It's a great exercise to work out what your values are in a company and what kind of culture you want to be. It's no good saying we want to be kind employers and then asking somebody to do 14 doubles in a row in a kitchen. They've got to live it all the way through. And when you're in a bigger organization, you start getting tiers of management. I wonder if there's a way of rewarding various people who do live those values. Maybe it's a way of measuring your team member of the month. It's a way of giving a little bit of an extra bonus or whatever. It might be inviting people in with their families or their girlfriend, boyfriend for a bite to eat for living those values. Yeah. And I think it's only when you're doing it and talking about it. By the way, we went into so much detail with this. We even tied the daily briefing sheet, the template that you can fill in and then the brief of 10, 12 team members. We even tied those into the values. So it was literally twice a day being discussed. And like I say, it's a lot of work, but as you rightly highlight, the return on that was tenfold. The customer's happy, the team member's happy, retention is up, which saves you a fortune. So I think our listeners would be wise to just sort of have a good crack at this and see where they go with it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I did a quote last time, so I don't want to do this every time. I think there's a Richard Branson quote, and I think I even quoted him last time. There's a Richard Branson quote, and he says he doesn't put his customers first, he puts his people first, because then they will put his customers first. So yeah, I think that's key in what you're saying there as well. So Okay, so if we move on now to talking about employee welfare, and what we can do to look after employee welfare on a day-to-day basis. Now, for you, Si, you've mentioned that employee welfare is these benefits that we can potentially give, whether that be flexible working, cycle to work scheme, etc. And I completely agree, but I also think that employee welfare is a kind of a bigger picture of how is that person actually feeling, and how are they working, how are they enjoying their work. And to understand that, and this comes across all of the employee welfare benefits, you really just need to give individual employees time, because everybody's different. So you need to take that time just to ask your employees, what do you need from us? What will make your life easier? And then we can set about finding it. I was speaking to one of our clients recently, and they asked their employees, what would make you happier? What would make you stay longer, work with us, want to progress the company? And obviously, instantly, everybody thinks money, but not a single one of them said money. It was all about value, appreciation, being looked after, knowing that there are opportunities available to them. So really making sure that you understand the individual. And again, it's a time exercise, Simon, and you need to be collating this information and actually using it to help your employees and give them what they want, to drive them to progress and to stay with you.
It's amazing you say that, and as you say that, I'm recalling a conversation I had, and it was a manager. It was a large organisation I was working within, and I asked one of the managers we were on a trip, and I said, "Tell me what you need. If I can give you anything, what would it be?" And I expected money, bonus, and he said, and I didn't understand it at first. He said, "Unlock the inventory system before 11 o'clock." And I was like, what are you talking about? And apparently the IT system that allowed them to go in to do their inventory on a weekly basis on a Sunday night unlocked at 11 o'clock, which is what time the business closed. So the managers who had to do the inventory would work the busy period of Sunday lunch, float around for 7 or 8 hours during a quiet Sunday night, and only then be able to start printing out the sheets to go start counting the dry stores, the liquor, blah, blah, blah. And they were there till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning doing this and inputting it, tired, groggy, and making mistakes. I was like, I didn't even know we did that. So I went off to see our head of IT and went, what will it take for me to make this so it unlocks at 6 o'clock at night? Because there's a lot of products that they won't use that they can be counting. And the head of IT just turned to his laptop and went, it was done. I didn't know, he didn't know, because I was too far removed from that business, which I judge myself on, from that element of the business, to know. But circling that back down around to employee welfare, that affected at that point 100 businesses with 100 managers, 200 assistant managers. It affected a massive amount of people whose welfare were improved simply because I asked the bloody question that I should have asked earlier.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. So you mentioned there as well, you've been too far removed from the business. And this is one of the points that I've mentioned earlier about us actually being in the business, seeing what's happening, seeing how the culture's lived, seeing what people want, talking to people and understanding the business on a day-to-day basis. Because like you said, you solved that issue within a minute. There's things that are happening on the floor that we just don't know about, and people are too scared to ask. Oh, I can't ask senior management to do that. But if senior management like you are going to them saying, tell me what you want and I'll do it, I'll try my best to do it, to find your solution, that just creates that feeling for the employee. And like you said earlier, it's not about being warm and fuzzy, but it creates a feeling for the employee of, wow, they care about me, so I'm going to care about their business.
Exactly, and that actually led. This was a large organization. It's worth saying that in smaller organizations, you don't need the formality of these processes that we're talking about. You just need to be in there. Yeah. When I was looking after a small five strong pub business, I was in there all the time. So I'm talking to people all the time, and you're getting a lot of this data back. But in the larger businesses, we started a roundtable, and we'd go to one area of the country and ask 10 people to come and sit around the table. And then we take that back to the boardroom, and the stuff we were being told and asked for generally dictated our policy going forward, whatever we're going to do. And so much of it, Victoria, as you say, is about people feeling, you said this before we started recording, I'm going to let you talk about it because it's really feeling valued. Nobody ever says thank you to me. It was a massive thing that came up all the time. No one knows how hard my job is. No one values the fact I stayed late on Saturday night and got us out of the shit. You know, and I was hearing this all the time, and I'm going to hand back to you for your point on value and appreciation.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like I said earlier, I had that client and they said that all their employees wanted was value and appreciation. And I've used the example before, Si, when I've been an expat previously for a number of years. I've probably been on aeroplanes more than I should have been. And every time you come into land, the captain does his little speech kind of prior to landing, cabin crew prepare, whatever. And he always says, thank you to our cabin crew for all of your hard work today. Now, that could have been a 7-8 hour flight back from Dubai to the UK. The girls are tired, they've had enough, they've worked really hard, but that tiny little thank you will just give them the pick-me-up of, oh, someone is grateful for what I've done today. And that gratitude and appreciation, again, we can't put it into monetary value, so for the return on investment that you'll get for it, but you will get a return on investment tenfold just by being grateful to your employees. And when I say being grateful to your employees, I'm not saying say thank you for the sake of saying thank you. Actually, genuinely, just take a second, whether you're at C-level or your GMs, just taking a second to think, do you know what? I wouldn't have been able to run this service without their hard work tonight. I wouldn't have been able to do this without their hard work tonight. Like you've said to me before, Si, there's every person counts. And we should all be grateful that we can work as a team and deliver what we need to our customers. So that just moment of genuine gratitude will go such a long way with your employees.
You know, I can agree more on it, particularly when you say about when it's said with meaning and feeling. Just before we close down the employee welfare, or the welfare, the softer side of retention, as it were, something that I think we really need to focus on in our sector, you know, reputationally, where long hours, unsociable hours, difficult conditions, on our feet, etc., 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 all of which has a basis in truth. There is unsociable hours needed. If we take a more flexible approach, you know, job sharing, part-time workers, I'm thinking chef now, you know, offering different shift patterns, you know, letting people have a weekend night off, you know, every week, guaranteeing this stuff, guaranteeing people families. We tend to lose people as they move into sort of when they get a bit older and start having families and things. We tend to lose people historically as a sector because who wants to be away from my family every weekend? Now, we're not able to sit stiff on this anymore. We need to be flexible and we need to understand what people need. And I would rather have 2 really happy people working 20 hours a week back to back than 1 miserable person missing his wife and kids doing a 40-hour week. And it's out there. There is a lot of people out there. We just need to take a more flexible approach.
There are a lot of people out there, and especially with the cost of everything going up right now, so many people are looking for a second role. So the potential to tap into that market and to, like you say, allow them to job share and have these great skills, but work around them and what works for them is huge.
Before we move, if our listeners remember rightly, we always give 3 little tasks before we leave. But before we do that, I just want to tackle something that really, really bugs me, and it's this whole paradox of commerciality versus looking after your people. Okay, that it's this myth that looking after your people well cuts into your profit line, takes away a lot of money out of your business, a lot of time, a lot of energy. Okay, I don't know where this has come from. I see it sometimes there's something going on in LinkedIn at the moment where people are talking about this. I couldn't disagree with it more. I think it's the biggest load of bullshit I've ever seen. The reality is this: if you don't invest your time, if you don't invest your money into the people who are delivering for your customers and delivering the money into your tills and into your PDQs, you're going to lose a fortune. It's ridiculous. Just the cost of rehiring someone who's been with you for 6 months. You've got to re-go through all their training, all their induction, all their mandatory training. You've got to go through everything. They've already engaged with your customers. They've got to know your customers. Your customers are going to be concerned that it's never revolving door. You and I spoke to someone yesterday who is a great guy, and he worked for a company who had 105% turnover every year. 105% turnover. Now, just to be clear, because I'm sure he's going to listen to this, we know that it wasn't his fault, but that was a very, very large company that everyone will know, and they were running through 105% of their people every business. So for every 100 people they needed every year, they were re-employing 105 people. I can't think of anything more bonkers in my mind. That to me is everyone gets in a room for however long it takes and cures that problem. And that problem has not been solved for so long, which is why people think it's a financial problem. And it's not. It's the way to build your bottom line, the way to protect your shareholders' money is literally to invest some money up front into the learning and development, the progression, the welfare of your people within a great cultured organization. I can't say it any more clearer than that. There's reams of data supporting this fact. I think, is that my rant over? Do I get a rant? And do I have to pay £1 for saying?
You have to pay £5 for that and get off of your soapbox.
All right.
On that, no, I just want to re-emphasize that, Si, because like we said, the costs, it's not only your cost of recruitment, it's the cost to the loss to your business. So you're then a person short for 4 months while you're trying to recruit, which means that your service isn't as great, which then means that 2 customers a week drop off. How do you measure that cost? So yes, you have to invest the money and the time to make sure that you're keeping your employees happy and you're retaining them, but you will get a return on the investment. You may not see it in figures, but it will be there. Well,
it's there in customer satisfaction. There's no way somebody on day 3 can give the same level of customer service as someone on day 90. It's as simple as that. And your customers, especially in this day and age, will be the ones who speak with their feet. But yeah, my soapbox is parked on the table till next week. So we like to leave you with 3 things to think about for the week, and just actions that we're not saying you must do or even you should do, just some suggestions for you. The first one we've got is, if you and your colleagues at peer level, your management teams or whatever, can just sit down and try and articulate your company values, okay? Do you know what they are? And can you then try and overlay them with an employee journey? The example I gave 10, 15 minutes ago, does it fit? Is the company demonstrating its values? Are they clear enough and concise enough and articulated well enough across the entire company employee journey? That might be the MD's journey, or it might be a kitchen porter's journey, but is it being articulated? That was point number 1. Number 2, Victoria?
I think you've kind of covered 1 and 2 in together. So really you want to understand make sure you can understand and articulate your company's values and etc. But then you need to review your company journey for an employee. So what happens at the moment? If I come in as a freshie today, what will happen from the time I'm hired to the time I retire, for example? So what plans do we have in place? Like you mentioned earlier, do we have our plans laid out, snakes and ladders boards? Do we have a learning management system? Do we have clear employee journeys defined so that we can retain our people through the point we covered earlier, which is training, progression, learning and development?
Okay, cool. And finally, the one that we said we thought would be really interesting is just pick a couple of team members this week and ask them, sure, lots of people do it anyway, what would they really like out of their employment with you beyond the normal terms and conditions of getting paid and getting a pension and whatever? What is it they'd really like to see from you as an employer? I'd be really keen to see in any comments, if anyone wants to comment, what it is that their team members are telling them. Because as I explained earlier, every time I've asked that, I've got a question that I've completely not, I've got an answer I've not expected. It's just really fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if we wanted to squeeze a fourth in, I would say ask yourself, do you live your culture and values? Ask yourself honestly, because if you don't, you can't expect your team to.
Cool. Let's see. I'd like to see some comments coming in on this week. We got some great feedback, as Victoria said, and we're incredibly grateful that people took 20, 30 minutes out of their lives to listen to this. The feedback's fantastic. It's nerve-wracking doing this stuff, and it's, you know, putting yourself out there a little bit. I got some great feedback from people I haven't seen for many years in some cases. It's just really nice. It was really, really sweet. And I'm hoping that, you know, if a couple of people get something out of this, this is fantastic. But for me, I've really enjoyed this chat. Victoria, thank you. I'll hand over to you to wrap it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Simon. Great conversation as always. As Si said, we'd really love you guys to interact with us. Please, by all means, comment on what we've talked about, challenge us, question us. We're happy to get into conversations, by all means, in the comments on LinkedIn. And once again, thank you for the support so far.
Great. See you later.
Thanks, guys.